Can you make a game without your keyboard and mouse? Yes. But can I do it without going insane and unaliving my PC? That's the more interesting question. And the answer is yes, kinda. But I think the experience really helped me at game dev. I did the experiment during the last 2 GMTK jams, and hey look, I finished the video just in time for you to do the same, if you dare. Now, you may ask yourself, how can you even do that? It's alternate input methods. I chose handwriting detection. I'm the undisputed owner of a low-end Gaumon graphics tablet. I bought it for cheap from a local weeb. What people usually don't think about is that it can be used like a mouse. So with cursor movement and the ability to type, it should be easy, right? No. Next to typing, handwriting is painfully slow. And typos are on a whole new level. You wrote something? That's a 7, right? Okay, you are writing over it to correct it. Still a 7, right? Or maybe an A? No, 7 again. That's what I get for using Windows 10 built-in handwriting detection out of the box. But let's look at a positive side. They say limitations breed creativity, right? And I think I found a new kind of limitation. When usually your limits are about something you don't know, or tools you can't use, or your tools can't do something, I had the main limit of getting what's in my head into the game engine. After I got through my frustration, it was a great experience actually, and I recommend it. Now for the setup. Luckily, my graphics tablet has 4 configurable buttons. That means I get 4 keys without a keyboard. The obvious mappings were Ctrl-S and Ctrl-Space. Ctrl-S, of course, to spam it every few lines like a good programmer, and Ctrl-Space because it opens the autocomplete options. Oh, what would I have done without that? Now, software. What special software do we need to make this work? Number 1, the tablet driver, because we want the best out of our cheap plastic. Number 2, VS Code. I use Godot's code editor pretty much exclusively because I think it's great. But for handwriting, VS Code is slightly less buggy. And then just your regular tools, in my case, Godot, Krita, and Audacity. Krita works well with graphics tablets, as expected of any self-respecting drawing program. Godot can manage. Audacity is usable with mouse only, but the export window needed the on-screen keyboard, which I allowed myself when nothing else would work, or when handwriting kept crashing 20 times in a row, which it did sometimes. You'd think with this limitation you should focus on textures, and that's what I did. 30-something images is a lot for me in game jams. Now, code-wise, there were a lot of interesting considerations. Number 1, I had to keep code simple. Whole English words are always better than abbreviations. Single letters also work, but not as good. So instead of obj, I'd always write node, key, or amount. Number 2, rewriting is not gonna happen. If you can barely write something once, you don't want to do it again. You're lucky if you can put in the new features you need. Think forward. When you can't channel all of your brain into the project, you need to think more and make that limited bandwidth count. 3, the best way is the easiest. It would be great if I could say in the recipe, 1 stone with the distraction hammer gives 1 stone and 2 pebbles, but then I'd have to program something to handle that times 2. Instead I just say it gives stone pebble pebble and be done with it. That got a bit silly for the fat man that gives 20 dust and 20 ash, but it also let me alternate dust and ash, which is a nice feature. So, this is your last chance to like and subscribe or tell me how insane I am before I actually show you the end products and some of their inner workings. Are you ready? No? Good. My 2024 game was Build a Human. Right away I was like, shit, I need a game that is entirely mouse movements and left click because I only have my graphics tablet for input. I can't test anything else. So I decided on the idea that you have to build an entire human from absolute scratch. Because I still hadn't noticed I can't make mechanically deep games like this. You drag and drop fundamental particles into the mixer to get new subatomic particles. Then you forge them into bigger parts by putting them in a 3D pattern. In the code you can see many of the problems I mentioned earlier. I was trying fancy things with complex programming that was hard to input and wrong the first few times. This is very evident in the blueprint class. This is the one that describes recipes for the forge. It basically needs to brute force check all rotations of the ingredients, and with the data structure I chose, that was complex. Speaking of that, I like this data structure. I think it's called a permutation representation, and it's apparently used for Rubik's Cube solvers. So in this case I have a cube adjacent shape with 19 positions that can have any value. So I give every position a hard-coded index. To rotate the shape, I map it with a permutation, meaning an array that tells me for every position what value from the old state should end up there. Doesn't make sense? Tell me in the comments if you want a dedicated video on those. Anyway, this class nicely illustrates my input difficulties. You can see how inconsistent the spaces are in the permutations, and when I noticed that turn right actually turns left instead of fixing it properly, I duplicated the line that applies it twice, because turning a cube right is the same as turning it left thrice. My 2025 game was Dust to Dust. It was heavily inspired by Little Alchemy, but mostly reversed. Instead of only fusing, the player gets more and more hammers from God for completing objectives. Do you know the saying, when all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail? That's the idea. This time I learned my lesson, and instead of UI, I leaned heavily on graphics and dialogue, as they are the only two things I can semi-reliably output. Recipes are no longer classes, but string entries in a dictionary. Dialogue is similar, just strings in an array of arrays. And if I need some control, like playing music or removing items, I put them in another array between dialogues. The array contains the function name and the arguments to keep it straightforward. Maybe not the best solution, but it was the one making the most of my limitation. Another innovation I had, at least something I did for the first time then, was dynamically created missing textures for any item. If you try to get to the me Easter egg or build a nuclear bomb, you will see a few items that I didn't have time to texture. I did a similar thing in Build a Human to create all the atoms, but this time I needed something dynamic. I couldn't detect beforehand any texture that was missing, or at least I didn't have the time to program that. So I just try to load the file, and if it's missing, I render it. The renderer is a small sub-viewport that isn't visible. It renders a label with the item's name on a gray background. Then the image is saved to the resource loader, so it doesn't need re-rendering every time the item loads. That safety net allowed me to finish the story and sounds before I did the final sprites. Some of them were not in the game until minutes before the deadline. That was my tale of the keyboardless coding experiment. I hope it was entertaining, and maybe you can share your experiments soon. GMTK is this week, or if you're watching later, any weekend jam will do. Like and subscribe if you want to see more, and don't forget to tell me all of your thoughts and experiences if you dare.